So we're here with a friend of mine, Angie. She is a six-time world jiu-jitsu champion, but not only in IBJJF, but also as a SJIF. Right. So, um,
Yes,
actually,
yes,
do
yes.
you want to kind of explain both of those? Or
Yeah, these two different federations. The Sports Jiu-Jitsu International Federation is one, and the IBJJ is another one. It's so many different organizations now, and that's the two more important ones in Jiu-Jitsu, the biggest ones. They also have the Abu Dhabi uh, Federation, and they also have the Jiu-Jitsu World League, which is a smaller one, and they have smaller, even smaller one. But the two biggest one is the Sport Jiu-Jitsu International Federation and the IBJJF.
yeah, and you actually have won not only in nogi but also in gi as well, correct?
Yes, and I train mostly like 90% of the time. I train with the gi, but I since I did wrestling when I was younger, so I think that it helped me a lot with the no gi as well. So I don't even train no gi. We only I train the Gracie Academy, but we only do gi no gi twice a week. So sometimes I only take one class a week. But I think because
Mhm.
of my wrestling, so that translates to no gi jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, that's great, and I think it really gives you the edge, right? Like when you're competing.
Yes, I think even when I started as a white belt, I've been training for about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for about 7 years. But before that, I did Shaolin, I did Tai Chi, I always done traditional martial arts. I did wrestling back in South America. My brothers, they were wrestlers and bodybuilders too, so we used to train together. So as soon as I went to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as a white belt, I started competing right away and I started winning tournaments because of my wrestling. You know, I give you good base, I give you good uh, posture, good foundation for any kind of grappling.
Okay, so I think there's some evidence, right? Because like what some people say often is that like, oh well, the gi is gonna help your no gi, but I think in your situation, you're wrestling, which would be like no gi actually help your gi, right?
Yes, yes, it did a lot because, like I said, I already knew some grappling. So with that knowledge and having, I think you the knowledge of how to control the human body, how to move, how to achieve positions. And I didn't know a lot of submissions because I didn't train catch wrestling at the time. It was for submission wrestling. It was mostly high school wrestling. So it was mostly pinning. So what I used to do is I used to take down people, double leg take down, single leg take down, house the guard, just hold them, just I have very good side control. I just hold them there, and I used to win a lot of matches that way, just by taking them down and just keeping them down.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so let's go ahead and maybe fast forward to where you and I met. So we met last year at an event where you helped me do a catch wrestling presentation. It was
Yes.
really nice to meet you then. But I was kind of showing, or you helped me kind of demonstrate some of the main holds in catch wrestling. So like the toe hold and some of the uh, face lock stuff and then double wrist lock. What did you think about some of that? Like kind of like the my approach as opposed to what's out there or what you've experienced in the past.
Yes, I really like catch wrestling as well, and I know that a lot of catch wrestling is very very similar to jiu-jitsu in many ways. I know you don't use the guard a lot like we do in jiu-jitsu, with all the types of guards, like so many types of guard, open guards and closed guards. But I really love the leg locks, and you are so good at leg. You were showing me some leg locks too, even not only the two holds, but also the knee bars and all that kind of stuff. So I really love those. And of course, face cranks, we don't really use them in Jiu Jitsu, or sometimes some people use them, but there's like, they always try to get it. Like if you go for the rear naked choke, you try to get under the neck. But I was surprised when you did that to me. The standing face crank. It's very effective. It's so uncomfortable. It's so painful that it's a very effective move. And very effective submission.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm glad you can. I'm glad you agreed too. So, but with that being said, actually, you were telling me earlier, you it kind of got you interested, and then you found some old books. Do you want to show that to us?
Yes, yes. I there was a reason that you contacted me to talk about wrestling because I found these two old books that I really love and I've been reading. Is the Science of Wrestling and the Art of Jiu-Jitsu, but it's a book from 1923. So this is original from 1923. This is not like a reprint or something. So I mean, a lot of the techniques is amazing because the Gracie Academy, of course, they've been training I think since 1912 or something, but the Gracie Academy was founded in 1925. So all
Mm.
the Gracie Academy logos is at Gracie Jiu-Jitsu since 1925. I think that's when the Helio Gracie founded the Gracie Academy with Carlos Gracie. And this book is from 1923, so it's even older than the founding of the race economy. And a lot of the holds that you see even a lot of the stuff that we see. Look at that.
Yeah,
It's
can
like,
you put it close to the camera?
yes, I love the stuff. Like I never seen that with scissor body scissors with the arm lock, stuff like that. I never seen that move, and it looks extremely effective. And so many, like we call kimuras, it's a hammer lock, and then they have the Americanas, and a lot of like this. You never see this kind of stuff in jiu-jitsu,
Yeah,
it's just like a self-defense kind of, and I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of this stuff, and so I'm surprised, to find so many moves that I thought they were new, you think those moves came from jiu-jitsu, um, and I know that wrestling um, and grappling have been around for maybe thousands of years, in Greece, in Africa, in Mongolia, in India, they have the mat wrestling in India, which is very old too. But some of the moves, I'm so surprised that it's a lot of the moves that even we train now at the academy. It's a lot of the same, very similar moves, look at that. It's a lot of the same moves and
I love that one.
yes, yes. So many of the same move, and it's like and a lot of the leg locks too, which a lot of people now is thinking that leg locks is like a modern game, like oh we just came out with all these brand new leg lock, but you look at the books and you see a lot of the same, kind of uh, entries and for the leg locks and a lot of stuff for the legs too. Like oh
Yeah, brilliant.
yes, yes. I'm really wanting to start trying some of this stuff. Yeah, you see the taking the back with the hooks. Look at
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yes, with the
Oh man, and see,
hooks.
like right now, that's the a lot of times people call that the power half now, and it's
Yes.
becoming really trendy. You see Gordon Ryan using that a lot now.
Oh yes, and but you even put the hooks too. Like you will think
Yep.
that's something like everybody talks about putting the hooks in, and sometimes you look at that and you think it's just jujitsu that is jujitsu stuff, but it's And I know that a lot of the catch wrestling. I'm sure they everything is interconnected. That they got some stuff from the Japanese also because I was reading a little bit about the Maeda, the one who went to Brazil and was teaching the Gracie family jiu-jitsu. And I know he used to do a lot of presentations even in Latin American countries. Like he was in Nicaragua, he was in so many. I think it was even in Cuba, so in Europe, and he was doing presentations with catch wrestlers too. So
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of the stuff, the catch wrestlers learned some stuff from the Japanese, and the Japanese learned some stuff from the catch wrestlers in England and all these places. So everything is learning from each other, which I really love that too.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the thing that people nowadays don't realize. I think people who are alive today think that the past was completely different from the way it is now. Like people's motivations were different, but it's actually not so true. It's like a lot of a lot of people were really similar. So like they were even thrill seekers. Like they would travel to compete against some of the best people that they've been reading about in the newspaper or something. And yeah, there was like some travel between like even between England. They even had early tournaments in catch wrestling, and people from around the world did travel to England to do these tournaments. There's like there were only few of them, but yeah, you can see how people were traveling still and kind of spreading the art and kind of mixing the different styles and stuff, even at the early 1900s era.
And actually, I was going to ask you something, Raul, since you know a lot about the history of catch wrestling. My own speculation, I don't know if it's true. You can tell me if it's true or not. That one of the biggest difference also in like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and catch wrestling is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seems to evolve. You know, a lot of the new guys, they're coming up with some new techniques, new ways to enter into a position, new ways to take the back, new guards, new ways to get to a guillotine choke, stuff like that. But it keeps evolving, They even talk about the old timers and the new generations and all that kind of stuff. But I see that catch wrestling, and I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think I even hear you say that one time in one of your videos. So sometimes I watch your videos too, and I think catch wrestlers, they try to keep it traditional, that they don't, you don't hear that someone saying the new generation of catch wrestling with the new entries, but it's always catch wrestling is, you try to, I think that one of your missions too, like to keep it traditional.
Mm.
Like this is the
Yeah.
traditional technique. Like this, what we see here is what we see today. It's not a
Uh-huh.
lot of, it's not a lot of new stuff added. It's like you want to keep this traditional. I don't know if because you love the tradition, or is that because catch wrestling in general, they don't look upon new ways to do things in a good way. What do you think?
I think one thing happened, or one of the main things that happened, why I guess you can't say that catch wrestling even back then was complete necessarily. There were different kind of like there are actually many different wrestling styles that were existing even a long time ago that have kind of faded away. So they all kind of had a little bit of their influence. Um, uh, but the thing is, the professional wrestling at that time, like in the early 1900s, I think the rules were so much more free that even it was much more applicable, or it was a definitely real kind of freestyle of wrestling. So it was advanced in that way. But then later on, when you had the Olympics taking over, and then even the American folk style wrestling, where they kept on taking away techniques, right? Because the rules are changing, there was time limits, all these different things that were happening to kind of change the popular way of wrestling in like not only in the United States but also in the whole world. So wrestling over time became something different. So I think that's why, like we're kind of talking about trying to revive real wrestling, is because yeah, it's like the modern idea of wrestling is kind of not complete, not the complete version, and the complete version is really great. So we're trying to kind of bring the old way, which was actually more free, including the submissions, like the no time limits, or so it had more of these like transitions, like you were mentioning, or um, even kind of like some of the modern things that we're seeing nowadays. Like right now, Berimbolo has gotten really popular, but it's still kind of like a version of a Granby roll, which has been in wrestling for a long time. So it's like there's all these really cool things that might seem new, but they were part of the original version of professional wrestling.
But what are your missions, or is that in general catch wrestlers love to keep it original? They don't look into, oh, let's develop some new stuff. They always try to keep, like you said, bring some of the stuff from the past, from the 1920s and 30s and
Mm.
40s. to say this is what we have then, and we want to make it that way now too. Yeah, but you don't think about, oh, let's innovate and bring something new. No, right? You want to keep that originally from the beginnings of catch wrestling. Yeah?
Well, I think that's in a way, like at least at this point, the innovation is actually reviving the old way because it's like it's so rare to find someone that knows the original way. Like even a lot of people who were like some of these old timers. I mean, there's very few that are still alive nowadays, right? So, and I was lucky enough to train with a few of them. So that was the thing. They're still like their old way is still not what you're seeing in kind of like modern wrestling or modern submission grappling. So I think that like the in my point of view of like the old way thing is like it's still like bringing that back is still the innovation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I
Yeah.
understand.
So
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah. So I guess maybe when the real thing if it becomes more commonplace, then that way you might have to start innovating. But like right now, yeah, it's like just trying to get the old ways back. It's like that's innovation in itself, I guess.
Okay. Yes, yes. Because it was an art that you almost it didn't disappear completely, but somehow it went away a little bit. Yeah, it kind of it, it's like if you go to many countries and you say catch wrestling, they don't even know what it is. So it's like, what is this? Yeah,
Yeah. Or like if you go someplace and you say lucha libre, right? Because that's where like that's kind of where they got the name for freestyle wrestling in the Olympics. And
yes,
so yeah, you go somewhere and you say lucha libre, it's like what comes to your mind? I mean, sometimes it's like people wearing masks or just different types of pro, right?
yes, yes. And not and people know already know almost everybody knows that it's no the guys are very hardworking and they know a lot of techniques and uh, they are amazing athletes, but I know that it's not like a real competition in wrestling. Something like they set it up, to so
Yeah.
lucha libre, yeah. So that is no real competition, no.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. But do you think you might be willing to compete in some catch wrestling rules matches?
Me?
Yes.
Oh yes, I would love to. Um, do you do heel hooks in catch wrestling or no heel hooks?
Yes, yes, that's totally fine. Just make sure you don't lean back too much so that you don't
Okay.
pin yourself
No,
before the.
I'm so afraid of the heel hooks. Like did you see there was an event yesterday? Did you see the event?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, the Vinny
Vinny
Magalhaes.
Magalhaes, yeah, you see his leg got complete. He got like a fibula, a spiral fracture or something from Craig Jones because sometimes it goes so fast the uh, heel hooks that if you don't tap right away, it can damage your knee, it can break your fibula. I'm always, yeah, like I'm only learning now leg locks. Like before, I didn't focus a lot on leg locks, especially the Gracie Academy. I've been there for a while, and it's more kind of traditional. So you don't get a lot of leg locks when you are starting. Like as a blue belt, usually in these competitions, you blue belts, white belts, you don't allow leg locks, only the straight ankle lock for blues.
Mhm.
But now that I'm getting closer to brown belt, because now I got three stripes on my purple, so one more stripe and then I get a brown belt. I have to learn more leg lock. So I'm been learning some of the entries to the ashigaramis that we call it,
Yeah.
entries for the heel hooks or for the uh, knee bars and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still a little careful with the leg locks because I know if you don't have it can be very dangerous and not very safe.
Yeah, yeah, that's the danger. But I think that's why back in the day this was pro wrestling, and then that's why they had like the the amateur version, or like the stuff that's safe for kids, and that's why we have like the folk style, and then
Yeah.
also in the Olympics they didn't want that kind of danger, so then it was originally freestyle was originally called amateur catches catch can, but
Yes.
like yeah, right from the beginning there was all the submissions were made illegal, so it was mostly just focusing on the pin.
Okay, yeah, because I remember they used to do a presentation like in circus, like in the circus, and they do a lot of shows for people in the small towns. They will travel around. Yeah, and in things, yeah, like you said, like in competitions, like in judo too, they cut so many dangerous submissions, and now judo got just mostly about throws and a few submissions because now they don't allow even to touch the legs, someone touch the legs
Yeah.
and the DQ. So in judo, they have so many forbidden techniques now that they used to be allowed before, many years ago, before I guess the Olympics and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, no, and so I think say like stuff like that, it's gonna make it so that in the future, I think I'm kind of hearing it already, where it's like maybe in the future there'll be a bigger group of people that are just like bring back real judo or something, right? Because the competition rules they keep um, minimizing the techniques, right? So then maybe someone who starts judo right now, and they only grow up learning the all the competition rules, they might not know that there were even more techniques in the past that were allowed.
yeah,
So they,
I think in Japan they have I think it's a cousin judo, which is very similar to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Now they allow everything. They allow unlimited time on the ground. It's not like you have a few seconds, but so I think it's cousin judo, which is very similar to Brazilian jiu-jitsu because the rule set allows them to be in a what they call niwasa, which is the ground fighting. So it's very similar to jiu-jitsu to Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
oh, really interesting. Okay,
Yes,
yeah, I don't follow judo that much, but I think that's good to hear. Like
yes,
so, they keep the self defense aspect alive, right?
yes, yes.
Or I saw that Rose Gracie was trying to bring back the whole idea of like self defense to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and so she had a few of these submission only tournaments, right? Did you
Oh
hear
yeah,
about that?
yes, yeah. She used to have it, but they don't do it anymore. I haven't. I think she stopped doing it. Maybe I don't know if it's financially or something. But they used to do the Gracie Worlds and Gracie Nationals, which it was a no time limit and submission only. But I think a lot of these rule sets also. Uh, I was looking at the stuff one time and reading something about it. Everybody's against all these rule sets sometimes because there is a lot of guys who knows how to play by the rules. So any rule that you have, there is always these guys who are very good to adapt to the rules to make to win by the rules. So
Mhm.
any rule that they have, they always if it's by points, so they just have 2 points and then stall for the rest of the match until it ends, and then you win by one advantage or 2-0, and or like this Eddie Bravo with the EDI too. A lot of people complain about that because some guys stall until the end, and then they go to overtime, and then they win in overtime. Even the guy who wasn't the best at the whole match, sometimes he wins because he's the best at the overtime escape.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's always people adapt to the rules, but yeah, it's so hard to say which one is the perfect format. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Is there a rule format that you like that you prefer?
for me, I still, a lot of people hate the IBJJF for many reasons, but maybe because I started competing at IBJJF and I always have good experience and I won so many tournaments with them, and I always been treated with respect, and they run very professional tournaments. I'm always very happy with the IBJJF. I really don't have a lot of complaints with the IBJJF, and I think it's one of the good tournaments and good rule sets. I know a lot of people will like to like knee raping, or allow heel hooks or allow this. For me, I like the IBJJF a lot.
Okay. Well, then, so do you think like kind of like what was done in wrestling, where you had like say like the amateur rule set, and then but say like in professionals, then would you be okay with something like that, where it's like, okay, so I'm doing IBJJF Worlds, and it's very prestigious, and I win in this rule set. But then, say if you wanted to take a professional match, then would it be okay to compete with like more like footlocks allowed?
Um, yes, like some guys who compete in the IBJJF, like Buchecha and all these guys, they compete at the ADCC, the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, uh, and they still have to adapt to the rule set, which is mostly favors a lot of wrestling. So they
Mhm.
go usually to wrestling academies and they train a lot of takedowns and they do a lot of wrestlings because a lot of guys who have good knowledge of wrestling, they do very good in the ADCC. So for me, since I'm a little bit older, I'm no in that professional level like those guys, and so for me, I don't mind to, I always open to compete in any type of a. I always compete with people younger than me, bigger. I do the open class when I compete, so I have matches with people over 200 pounds. So it's nice to test yourself, and test your jiu-jitsu and your grappling. So I don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe there could be maybe some kind of distinction like that, where it's like, yeah, you can have say like even an amateur rule set, and then professional maybe a little bit more dangerous. Right?
I think that's a very good idea. Yeah, like somebody like a BJJF have, for example, also the master division for someone who is older and the younger divisions. So
Mhm.
we so that will be a good idea. Like someone who is not a professional, like it's a do as a hobby, they can compete without fear of getting the knee damage. And someone who is high level grappler or professional, they can do heel hooks and all kind of dangerous stuff, like uh, because they are professionals and they know how to train for that. But someone who is a beginner or someone who is an amateur, like you said, it will be a little different. So it will be good to have the two rule sets too. For
Yeah,
example, like
yeah.
Sambo, I think Sambo, they do have that too, yeah, like in Sambo. They
Hmm.
have like combat Sambo where some submissions are allowed and a sports Sambo, and they have like 3 or 4 types of Sambo competition where some things are allowed, some things are not allowed.
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. And so, I mean, um, uh, yeah, I like how the IBJJF Worlds is prestigious, and I like how a lot of people are competing in that. But let's maybe they can do IBJJF, some kind of like pro division with different, like more free rules or something like that.
Yeah, like ADCC rules. A lot of people like I hear a lot of the professional guys, they like the ADCC rules because they allow everything, heel hooks and uh, someone like I think a catch wrestler could do well there, but I don't know why catch wrestlers don't. Why do catch wrestlers don't compete in ADCC? I haven't seen any catch wrestler competing or even uh, or if they compete in the qualifiers because they have to qualify. So I don't know if they compete or not, but I do can hardly hear any. Most of the guys who wins are jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah, yeah, or even like we're seeing like what the Nicky Rod, where it's like a amateur wrestler and learning some jujitsu is able to do real well. And yeah, I basically like my goal is to see if we can't train more people in the real authentic catch wrestling to see if they can't be competing in ADCC. I think it's just there's so few people who are doing the like the what I do or what I teach. Um, so we got to get some more out there, and some that are serious about uh, making this more than just a hobby. So hopefully we can in the next few years get some more competing in something like ADCC. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good point. It's a good point.
See, see. Yes.
Yeah. All right, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but how
No,
can
no, don't
people?
worry about it. Yeah, we can talk. I was going to show you the other book that I was reading too. It's called The Last Wrestlers. It's a
Cool.
very good
Nope.
book. I will recommend it to you also, which is this guy. He goes to a lot of different countries, to Africa, he goes to India, he goes to Mongolia, and he's doing research on how people uh, develop grappling and how grappling is used. You know, even he goes to Brazil to do the jiu-jitsu too. And it's a very good book, you know, about not only the origins of wrestling, but also he goes there and train with them and see the difference and the similarities with all the styles of wrestling. And he talks about catch wrestling too, and the guy from England, so he goes to some catch wrestling places over there too, and he talks about how, like you were talking about tradition, how a lot of these uh, wrestlers, for example, in India, they know what is jiu-jitsu, they know a lot of the advancements or the modern grappling game, but they want to keep it traditional. You know, like the Matu wrestlers in India, they've been doing the same for over 1,000 years, and they still do the same. You know, the same tradition, the same place, the same mud pits. You know, they prepare, they fight in the mud, and they've been doing it. You know, they have their own guru that teach them, and they always follow the tradition. And even the younger kids, then you start developing new things. They just want to keep the tradition. So a lot of this wrestling in Africa, I think you see in Africa, it's like
Yeah.
some places like beautiful, huge events, everybody dancing, and they do witchcraft too. You know, they gotta have the little, you know, witchcraft things that they do and the ceremonies, and people fill out the stadiums, and the guys are like heroes, you know, and they don't come out with fancy techniques. So it's almost the same simple uh, basics, you know, like we call the basics, you know, that they always use. And you see the fights in YouTube, and even the guys pushing each other and using basic double leg down, single leg down, or use uh, nothing fancy, nothing new, just keeping the tradition alive of grappling, which to me too, when I started grappling, also it was not only just because I wanted to learn to defend myself or self defense, but also to me it's very spiritual. Like for a lot of these people, it's like very spiritual. You know, you are, uh, you know how to move your body. You know, your mind and your body become one, and you become the wrestler in that moment, the grappling, and you are. It's almost like a dance. Yeah, so it's to me it's always beautiful. It's like an art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No, it's really true that it can be like an art, and then hopefully sometimes if there is a spectator that they can appreciate that, right?
yes, yes. But it's beautiful. It's an art. It's a science. It's like a meditation. Everything in once. And I think
Hmm.
once you know the principles of grappling, you can just go from there. You know, they always said principles are more important than techniques, and that's something that with the years that I've been practicing and reading and watching, I I came to realize how true that is. Because once you know the principles of grappling, you even you everything becomes more clear. Yeah? All the techniques become more clear to you. Why, how, why do you do this? How do you do it? And um, in jiu-jitsu, that's what a lot of guys develop in the team, because when you know the principles, I think that's so they so fundamental. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of what, in a way, like going back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the catch wrestling and reviving it, and that like I think some of these catch wrestling principles have been confused with the amateur wrestling principles, which they are different because because the rules make amateur different sports. They have two different names, right? Freestyle, folk style. You can probably even throw Greco in there a little bit. So they have their own kind of uh, like philosophies in a way. So we're trying to bring back the catch wrestling fundamental stuff.
That sounds good, and I know that's one of your purposes, and from for your website and for your podcast to kind of not only show your love for catch wrestling, but also to bring back the catch wrestling. And I think it will always will be. I think it's not going away. You know, even if jiu-jitsu becomes popular and there's more jiu-jitsu schools and there are 1,000 jiu-jitsu schools, catch wrestling is always going to be there because there is always going to be people who want to keep the tradition too. So it's just like these guys in Africa, in India, in Mongolia, you know, they do
Yeah.
have jiu-jitsu over there, but they not going to. Everybody's not going to run to jiu-jitsu, and some people love the tradition. And like you said, when you look at it and you look at the techniques and you look at the principles and you look at the way they used to do things and you compare to now, a lot of people forget that a lot of the stuff that we have now is the same stuff that we have before too.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. So it's like the old becomes new again, right?
Yes, exactly. Like it's going in a circle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, actually, is there any way if someone wants to find you on like social media, is there any way to find you?
Yes, I have an Instagram. Maybe you can put a little link in the bottom. It's Anjani Anjani Buddha Buddha. That's my Instagram. It's Anjani Siddhartha.
Yeah, I think I'd recommend anybody to follow you because you're basically uh, you're really a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu expert. So if anybody has a question, and you're very accessible, so I think anybody should ask, and you'll get a good answer.
Yes, and I've been not only do I train, and I've been training um, Gracie Jiu Jitsu directly with the Gracie family for a few years, but also I'm I like to dig deep, so I read a lot. I have dozens of books on jiu-jitsu, not only from modern jiu-jitsu, but also I have a lot of books from the traditional jiu-jitsu. I have books from samurai times from Japan, and I love the history, and uh, so I have a lot of good knowledge on that on all the subjects.
Oh, great! I think what we should do is maybe do another chat where we talk about some of the ancient origins of Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, yes, exactly. We can do that, and then maybe we can talk a little bit also about how all that relates to the modern Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and how Gracie Jiu-Jitsu became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because a lot of people don't know the difference between Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Which there is a difference. Like at the Gracie Academy, we still train the traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu that people saw at the original UFC with Hoist, with the uh, punches and with the kicks, and we still see a lot of the self-defense technique, which a lot of the modern sports jiu-jitsu academies, they don't teach that. They don't teach how to break grips, how to protect your face, how to keep the distance, and also a lot of people think that self-defense is only knowing how to beat someone if they're going to beat you, but actually what they teach us and what is common sense that self-defense is also avoiding the fight.
Hmm.
Like if you walk in on the street and you see some guy who is maybe on drugs, crazy, screaming and coming, walking towards you, and someone will say, "Oh, I know jujitsu, so I'm gonna keep walking. And if this guy touch me, I'm gonna hit." No, I think it's more jujitsu to see the guy. He's crazy. He's not rational. You cross the street and go the other way, and that's what I did actually. I'm telling you that happens to be in real life. I saw this guy coming. He looked kind of crazy and talking about himself, and I thought about the two options. I was gonna say that I'm gonna keep walking and I know how to defend myself. And I said, this is stupid. Why should I get into? trouble and hit the guy. He hit me. Maybe he have a knife. So I'm just gonna
Yeah.
cross the street and just go the other way. That's jujitsu. You know,
Yeah.
getting away from someone. You know, it's not just fighting, but also avoiding the fight. Or someone
Yeah.
say something to you. Oh, your mom is this, or your mom. Who cares? You know, like why you gonna fight with some drunk guy or someone who, getting the police involved. And maybe the guy fall down and break his head and he dies, or he get injured, or he injures you, or he have a gun. So the best thing is jujitsu starts saying, "I'm go okay, thank you, bye bye. You know, I don't want to fight. I'm gonna walk away." That's jujitsu
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, it's like a lot of times these street fights just aren't worth it.
No, no, it's not.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're gonna go ahead and end it here, and then maybe we can try to do this again soon with more
Anytime.
history stuff.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I was always wonderful to see you at least far away. Hopefully, we can train together soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully the
Thank you.
quarantine ends soon. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.